There's room down here.
Yeah, you're right next to the live broadcast.
I just had a flash
This morning. Hats as well, as a sign of respect. We should remove our headwear for our guest speakers. Hands off. Hats off. And lastly, at the end of the presentation, for however long this takes, there will be a moment where you can ask some questions from our guest speakers today. Okay? So let's get started. Orange Shirt Day is a legacy of the St. Joseph Mission Residential School commemoration event held in Williams Lake, BC, Canada in the spring of 2013. It grew out of Phyllis Webstad's story of having her shiny new red orange shirt taken away on her first day of school at the mission. And it has become an opportunity to keep the discussion on all aspects of residential schools happening annually. The date was chosen because it is the time of the year in which children were taken from their homes to residential schools, and because it's an opportunity to set the stage for anti-racism and anti-bullying policies for the coming school year. It also gives teachers time to plan events that will include children, as we want to ensure that we are passing the story and learning on to the next generations. Orange Shirt Day is also an opportunity for First Nations, local governments, schools, and communities to come together in the spirit of reconciliation and hope for generations of children to come. Today we are going to acknowledge a truth in our country's history. We will acknowledge that it happened and participate in activities that will lead us in walking together towards reconciliation. When we talk about reconciliation, it's about building relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, educators, students, and everyone. Providing education on residential schools is a new responsibility for teachers in Canada. The Aboriginal students in our schools today are the third and fourth generation of not having to attend residential schools. Most of their grandparents did. We are told it will take 7 generations for this legacy to heal. Today we welcome to Carlton Mariah Martin and her son, Rainy French, to share with us their stories of residential schools and their intergenerational impact. Please help me in welcoming Mariah and Rainy to Carlton.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we always do, especially when we ask somebody like this who's going to share part of their story, part of their things, is the fact we have to follow protocol. And protocol dictates the fact that we offer them tobacco. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be offering Mariah with tobacco and Rainy with their tobacco so that they can use this to help guide their thoughts, guide what they're going to be saying to you guys in this regards. This is part of what we do when we're going to do something, especially something this important. So on behalf of Carlton High School, Carlton Comprehensive Public High School, I give both of you this tobacco in regards to your stories and what you're going to be sharing with the students. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My name is Mariah Martin. I'm a residential school survivor. I'm married. I'm called Ontario. Never went to school. And residential school in 1967. I went to St. Mary's residential school. Prior to that, I in a farm home, and my parents told me that I was going to go to a special school. Well, it was a special hours. The day they took me to this school, I was dressed in a white and a red vest. I had a bow on my neck and I had ribbons on my tails. And they told me that this school special for special groups. So they took me to this school. I remember being excited to go to the school. I was 3 years old and we drove up and it was a big red brick building. And I was really excited. Until I found out that I was different. That I was nation, that I was not bad. And there I met my old sister and my old brother. I met my old brother through the I went out to the boys. My old sister pointed out me. We saw the way. That's how I met my oldest brother. Very seldom saw him there. We would see him in the dorm, in the dining room, but it wasn't allowed to talk to him. When I first entered residential school in 1967, the nuns went down by the day. My older sister was there, and I remember excited now that changers that my foster parent had given me, and I was showing her that I had money in there. After that incident, we went up back into the dorms, and I was stripped of my clothing, just like the story that says that her orange T-shirt was taken away and she never saw it again. Well, I never saw my clothes after that day. I don't know what they did to them. I remember they took off my pigtails. They washed my hair with this stuff that really stunk, and they scrubbed my head like I had lice or something, and they scrubbed my body really hard, and that's when fear set in for me. I didn't know what I did wrong, why I was being treated like that, why my foster parents left me there. And I started sharing my story 5 years ago. Prior to that, I never talked about it. 45 years I kept it in here because I was ashamed. I was sexually abused in residential school. And we were told not to talk about it. We were, everybody knew what was happening, but we didn't talk about it because that's what we were told. We were told that we were going to go to hell. We were told that we were going to be punished if we talked about it. And so that went on for 5 years. As I grew up into an adult, I had very dysfunctional relationships because of that. I didn't like being touched. I had a very dysfunctional relationship with my kid's dad. I didn't know why. Until 5 years ago, when I applied for my IAP, my independent assessment. I had to look at that. Growing up, I started my healing journey in the mid-90s and early 90s, and over the time, the elders and my nokomis would always tell me, you got to go back where you came from to know who you are. I didn't understand that until I had to look at where I came from. I had to understand where my parents came from. I started this job 4.5 years ago. I work as a resolution health support worker at the Friendship Center downtown here. It's a PA, Indian Friendship Center. A lawyer phoned me. I happened to be in the office by myself. There's 4 of us that work in that program. I happened to be in the office that day, and I took that message, and he wanted me to do some research on some claimants. To my surprise, I came across my mom and dad's records. So I'm the 2nd generation of residential school. I copied their records. My boss came and brought me those records. She said, these must be yours. And I remember taking those pieces of papers and I cried. Because my mom and dad didn't raise me. I was in and out of child welfare system, residential school. That piece of paper was the closest I got to my mom and dad. I understood why my teachers told me, you got to understand where you come from to know who you are. I understood my parents. Even though my journey started in the mid-90s, I kept working. I kept trying to understand, and I couldn't understand. I understood why there was so much destruction in our lives. Why my mom and dad drank. Why my dad was so abusive. He was so abusive at times because he went to residential school when he was 10 years old, my dad. He was 16 years old when he came out. When I think about my mom today, my biological mom, she died a broken person. She died with that dysfunction, that hurt she carried. She took that to her grave. My mom passed away in 2006. I remember one day I went home and I was trying to research my mom's past. I looked for my aunties from White Dog, Ontario. I met an auntie and we used to meet and I used to ask questions about my mom because I don't know my grandparents on either side of my mom and dad. There were 7 of us siblings that didn't grow up together. We talk to each other, but we don't have a relationship with each other. We don't have that family bond because of residential school and the child welfare system. That dysfunction I carried into my adult life, into my marriage, into my children. I abused my children. That's not something that I'm proud of, but something that I'm learning to face. And learning to share that, to help me heal. Because that I can see that cycle going into my grandchildren. Because 7 generations went through residential school. It's going to take another 7 generations to heal that. I'm not going to see that. Today, I'm trying to fix that dysfunction, that hurt. I'm trying to pass it on to my grandchildren. But that cycle has gone through my children and my grandchildren. A few years ago, I seen my granddaughter that was 10 years old just going through a rage at her mother, at my daughter. When I look back at that, and I'm just like, wow, we have a lot of work to do. As a community, as society, to break that cycle. Because for me, understanding where I come from, I can try my best to try and correct that through my kids, through my grandchildren. I raised my grandson today. There's times I watch him go through that anger. And it hurts me. Here. It hurts me here when I see my kids hurt. When I see my daughter on the streets of Winnipeg, on the streets, destroying her life. That cycle still exists. But what I understand today is through my healing, through understanding where I come from, I know there is no mother out there willingly that's going to walk away from their children. They struggle with addictions. There's something wrong there. They have a past. They have a history. If we want to heal, we got to understand that. So we can make a clear path for our children and our grandchildren. One of the things I've learned in my life, working on who I am and where I want to be in today's life, is I'm willing to work that pain. Because when I work that pain, I'm going to be free. That's all I have to lose is that pain. To work on being the person I want to be a good mother to my children, to be a good grandmother to my grandchildren. Like I said, my children, I abused my children. When I think back about the abuse my children endured, especially my daughters, I've been sober for over 25 years, but I still had that rage. I would go into a rage at the drop of a hat. Things didn't fly in my home. My children flew in my home. Because I didn't know what to do with my anger. I didn't know why I was angry. I didn't know why I didn't have patience. Today I'm understanding that. Today I'm working at that. I work at that one day at a time. I use my resources. I call that my lifeline. When I need to talk, I pick up that phone and I call somebody and I talk to them. I may not know the person at the end of the line, but I know they're going to listen to me. Fear. Living in fear is, for me, when I look back, when I lived in fear in residential school for 5-7 years, that was a survival for me. When I became an adult, I had a nervous breakdown in 2000. I ran away. I ran away from my children. I didn't know what was going on with me. But I was already working on my stuff. I was already working on me. But I didn't know what to do with the stuff that I was experiencing. So I thought I'd run away. When we stop to listen to our hearts, my Nokomis used to always say, listen to your heart, you'll never go wrong. Listen to your children, they'll teach you things. My children have taught me how to forgive. They've taught me how to love. They've taught me how to forgive their dad. Their dad was also in residential school. And he was a violent man. And as a parent, I hid that from my, well, I thought I did. I thought I hid that from my children. Until one day my daughter said to me, my oldest daughter, she told me, she said, Mom, she said, the only reason why Rainey and Shannon don't really know what happened is because I protected them. She would take them when the violence started, she would take them in the back room and she'd crank up her stereo. That's how she protected her siblings. I would hide my bruises. I understand today why their dad was the way he was. He also was in residential school. He also experienced abuse. Back then I didn't understand. I just thought he was abusive. He was a mean man. When I look at my past, sometimes some of the things I've done, I laugh about it because, like, go kick doors down to try and look for my children because I was trying to protect them from society. Because of residential school, there's been a lot of the alcoholism in my family. I've lost 4 sisters. I've lost 2 brothers and a sister through alcoholism. I have a brother on the streets of Winnipeg. For years he's been walking the streets of Winnipeg. I had a daughter that overdosed in 2005. She left behind 3 children because her father wasn't there for her. Though we can't change the past, we can change our future and where my children go and my grandchildren. I can do the best I can to change that. Today, I still struggle with anger. I have flashbacks. I walk downtown and I'll see a nun and I get flashbacks. I get instant anger. I've never been to church since residential school. But that's a choice I make. I still have to work with that because I still fear that. But I have to deal with that. I still have a lot of work to do on myself. And I do the best I can with what I have today. And I just do what I can for today. I'm going to pass it over to my son because he's been impacted through this residential school era. He's the intergenerational. And I'm probably boring you guys, but he can speak your language. So I'll pass it over to him, and thank you for listening.
Good morning. My name is French, and over at just new action Tuesday over at Scott. Pretty fortunate now to take time to come over here today and support my mom and speak a few words about my. Just wanted to say I'd like to thank Carlton for inviting us, and I think this is really amazing. Just a quick little story here before I share my experience. This whole thing about this T-shirt movement and schools and that awareness. That's I was in social studies. And about halfway through the semester, I remember going through a textbook, and I remember page chapter, and it was about residential schools. And I thought, wow, this is kind of cool. It's neat that I get to learn about this. And I went to go flip over the next specific more, and to my point, there was more. There was one page of residential schools. And I had some of the and some of I thought I'd share that. I was just thinking about that while sitting here. Anyway, so talk about the intergenerational that real tell you a little bit is about my experience. The very first little thing that I took drugs in view myself as I remember going to school and I grew up I'm called an urbanized Indian, and what that means is that I lived on reserve, and I've been very often reserve. I have a treaty number, and I belong to a reserve, but I've never lived there. So, anyways, I go to school, and I mean, I remember having this idea that I was ashamed. One of the things that residential schools that they talk about, one of the earliest ideas that they had was trying to take the Indian out of the child. And 5, 6, 7 years old, I looked at that and I think of state taking the Indian out of the child. And I remember at that time, I was ashamed to be Indian. I was ashamed for my skin. I was ashamed to have that I don't know how I did, because my parents, we had us, when we were always supposed to be proud of your heritage, your old, be proud of and whatnot. And I think that's around that time. That's when my with either alcoholism or else they do drugs and whatnot. And or whether my mom was in a good mood or whatnot or anything like that. And I used to be afraid. I always wanted to be at somebody else's house. I never wanted to be home. I always wanted to be at my friend's house, because to me they had a normal, what I thought was a normal life. They had they had their both parents. Some of the stuff that happened. These are both my parents. Recently my mom in the last couple of years, and when I was a young boy, I heard my father's experience, and that's the very first time I've ever heard that man cry. and the Ukrainian community was there, and I remember that wasn't good enough for them. You know, things that, but I ended up that I started to learn about myself. Or her mom or whatever told her that I've been able to learn while walking this journey with my mom. Is I found out my culture while I'm working, and that's one of the things that the change has come from. Was that when I was I guess able to affect not only me, my mom, and I was center of society. I don't so.
No, present about Holocaust. Mariah, it's a stretch.
It is very hard to take the moment just to say that opportunity.
A lot of to hide
because I've always
traditions of a
very good parent.
It's a dark part of
Broad story of Phyllis.
There are is what is called get tested on that. You'll
On to whatever you're